The original Hades was a very special game for me. To say that it drastically changed how I view the gaming medium would be an understatement. Darren Korb's soundtrack was so good that I started to appreciate the soundtracks of other video games more often, and the moments in video games where music and gameplay combine became something I look forward to. The level of quality and polish raised my own personal standards for games. The crispness of combat honestly trumped other games' combat systems, making them more difficult to enjoy, and whether I liked it or not, I was pushed down a rabbit hole of roguelikes I've never been able to recover from. I don't see the original Hades as a game where you can just separate and analyze each aspect easily. Rather, to me, it is one whole stunning piece of art, and you experience it as such. For the first time in a while, that game made me remember that video games are an art form, which is something that I think very easily slips our minds. Some paint, some draw, some sing, some dance, and then there's Supergiant, masters of their own craft and artists in an echelon not many reach. When I launched Hades 2 for the first time after not touching it during the early access period and the main theme started playing, I genuinely sat there and teared up, just listening to the music. I can only remember a few times games have made me seriously emotional, but never before I'd even begun playing it. It was always at a key story beat or character death, but upon hearing the main theme, I was immediately transported back to a very fond time in my life, ready to experience it all again. Well, every single achievement and 87 hours later, yeah, this game is a masterpiece and the wait was 100% worth it. Just like Hades 1, Hades 2 will leave a lasting impact on me, and I want to tell you why. Whenever a game sticks with me, it's generally because it was exceptional at creating impactful moments. The first time I fought Hades stuck with me, and my first confrontation with Kronos felt the same way. But Supergiant isn't the only one who understands the importance of these moments. CDPR filled Cyberpunk with countless missions and sequences punctuated by incredible electronic music. Rampaging through Arasaka Tower with the Rebel Path playing in the background isn't exactly a moment easily forgotten. But there's a plethora of moments like this in other games, like the first time you're escaping from the moon in Risk of Rain 2, a tight extraction in Deep Rock Galactic, whenever the assault music kicks in Payday 2, It Takes Two, Split Fiction. These are games made with these moments in mind. Dying Light during the nighttime, All Gillied Up, finding a random cabin while exploring in Skyrim, your first time fighting the warrior in Borderlands 2. Fuck, if you play Souls games, you probably have a shitload of these moments in memory. And it's not limited to single player games. Do you know how many incredible moments you can have in just a short period playing games like DayZ? All of these examples are moments where you are not locked in a cutscene, you're not forced to do something, you're not forced to watch, you are actively playing the game, and the developers have carefully crafted an environment or moment in time where music, gameplay, atmosphere, stakes, tension, characters, acting, story, and everything that led up to that moment combine for a fucking feast. This is why Hades and Hades 2 are so fucking good. It's because they are filled with these moments, especially when experiencing them for the first time. This video will contain gameplay spoilers of this exact variety, so I'd highly encourage you to play Hades 2 for yourself first. I don't want to ruin the surprise of anything in this game, but there is one moment that really drives home the point I'm trying to make. But if you don't want this moment spoiled, then please skip past this chapter. It'll go straight to the rest of the review, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My first go around with Prometheus was fucked up, but I did eventually topple him, and as you can imagine, it was followed by a sigh of relief, some debriefing, changing for the keepsake, etc. I had to move on, obviously, but man did I need a pick-me-up. Then Supergiant hits me with this.
Maintenance access.
I don't think you understand the jolt of energy I was hit with when Into Tartarus started playing. It gave me actual chills and energized the fuck out of me to continue through Tartarus, and that's a moment I will not forget anytime soon. I should state that there will be no story spoilers in this video, but again, there will be gameplay spoilers, mainly with the alternative versions of bosses and even some bosses you may not have faced yourself. If it isn't obvious by now, I think Hades 2 is incredibly special, and as a sequel and challenge for Supergiant Games, I think they nailed it. Hades 2 takes risks with its content and design choices, the large majority of which pay off incredibly. Supergiant set out to make a sequel with more than 2 times the content of the original, and to do that, risks need to be taken. By no means do I think this game is perfect, but to pretend like any of my complaints make even a noticeable dent in the game's experience would be ridiculous. But if I was to choose one dent to get picky about, it'd be the story. I don't think the overarching plot of Hades 2 is as good as the first, but they are close. The pacing, which I think would have been my biggest issue, is now largely fixed from what I've heard thanks to the first big patch for the game. I chose not to roll back to experience the new version of the story because I was already finished, but honestly, it's kind of insane that Supergiant can patch and fix story elements, which are generally the one thing in games you can't just patch to improve. Even without the pacing issues, I think the plot was slightly weaker, but I like the characters themselves and the storylines quite a lot more. Hades 2 has more than double the content of the original, as I said, and the list of characters is no exception. It is fulfilling to talk to and sometimes resolve problems for these characters, even if they don't have an impact on the main story. And just like the first, there's a considerable amount of good humor to go around, which is to be expected with an eccentric group of gods such as this. Not all of the characters are noteworthy, but most of them are entertaining to talk to, and ultimately, in a game so dialogue heavy, that's all I can ask for. That's all I really have to say about the story though. If you know me, you know I'm generally a gameplay first person, so while the story was a force at play, the gameplay and systems of Hades 2 were the real motivators. Now, I paid no attention to Hades 2 content when it was in early access, so the fact that the surface even exists was a huge shock for me. And both the surface and the underworld are stacked with run-changing content that you won't find in the other, which goes a long way in making both paths feel different. The most obvious of these is the characters that you'll find in each. A trip through each path gives you a chance at meeting both new and returning characters, offering boons, gold, and an opportunity to increase your relationship. Combine that with the vendors and interactables that reside in each path, and you have drastically more varied runs than the original, no matter what path you take. If you played the original, then you'll know that the variety in each path generally comes from upgrades you purchase for those paths, and I swear to God, the options just kept coming. I'd concoct one upgrade in the cauldron, and another 2 would appear after my next run. Not all of the things that you concoct will be path-specific though, as the crossroads themselves, which is your hub world, plays host to plenty of characters and systems itself. The vibe of the Crossroads is almost opposite to the vibe of the House of Hades at the start of each game. Hades did his best to make his house feel unwelcoming, whereas the Crossroads and most of its inhabitants do the opposite. And as you progress through the storyline and relationships, the Crossroads will become more full, both with mechanics and people. One of the largest criticisms this game faced at first, at least from what I gathered from word of mouth, was the timer system, which affected ingredients made in the cauldron and crops you planted. I'm not sure how much they changed during the early access period, but I never once found it annoying or out of place. The timer simply asks you to go on more runs, and taking moments to fish, drink, or go in the spa with characters also passes the time, so I seriously never had any issue with this mechanic. Speaking of resources, they're what's spent on every aspect of the game that can be upgraded or created. This includes, but isn't limited to, weapons, familiars, relationships, and your Arcana cards. I did not find the resource grind tedious or improperly balanced during the majority of my playthrough. However, almost all of these resources became utterly useless much sooner than I expected, and all I could do then was convert them to kudos for cosmetics. I expected this to happen at some point, but not as soon as it did, though maybe because I had been so spoiled for content already, I fell into the trap of unrealistic expectations. I spoke about the variety in runs and how it's influenced by the characters you meet and the vendors available, but player freedom runs much deeper in Hades 2 than the first. Every aspect of a run, whether it's before or during, has either had changes or improvements, and that includes the combat system. Keepsakes return, and like the original, there are a few of them that I'd almost never take because they're either underpowered or too situational, but that's only a few. The large majority are useful and can drastically change how you coordinate your run, and I love that a lot. I feel like keepsakes should vary from lukewarm power or direction all the way up to run-changing abilities with a trade-off, and luckily that's what we have here. Arcana cards are your replacement for the Mirror of Night, and they act almost like a puzzle board where meeting certain conditions activates different cards. Initially, this felt like a weird miss for me, but once I got the setup that I wanted, I recognized it exists as it does to be flexible. For example, Strength is a powerful card that activates if you have no active death defiances. But if you don't like playing with just one life, you can disable Strength and allocate power elsewhere. Then, Supergiant went and added fucking animal familiars to this game, because why the fuck not? And I love their inclusion, but that's because they have a tangible impact on your runs, they're not just a throwaway mechanic that were put in the game for no reason. There are many other systems, such as the Fated List, that either make a return or are new in Hades 2, but to go through them all would just turn this video into a list. I meant it earlier when I said that I could not keep up with Hecate's Cauldron. Felt like every other run, I'd come out and have access to some new thing that would either make me stronger, impact the story, provide access to a new mode, or change the game in some way. I really did experience that magical feeling you get when a game just keeps throwing content at you. Now that I have it all unlocked and I can see the game from above, it's astounding just how much substance they packed into this sequel. And now we get to talk about the Nocturnal Arms, a large point of discussion for this sequel. I thought pretty negatively about the arms and their aspects pretty early on. I was not a fan of many of the aspects, and the general combat feel of a couple of the arms just didn't do much for me at all. I'd be consistently frustrated at how much I was animation locked, and disappointed that some of the aspects felt too unintuitive to use. Well, thank fuck I actually played the game, and thank fuck the game made me take all these weapons to the final conflict at least once to get the 100%, because the large majority of these arms and their aspects are usable, intuitive, and fun. All it took was a tiny bit of effort to get used to them, and all of a sudden you have weapons on a much wider spectrum of ability than the original, and I think that's the main takeaway for me. I love it when you can just spam mouse 1 and call it a day, but having aspects that completely change how you approach a run is the kind of challenge that makes a game like this last. I needed to go into each run and think differently about which gods I would use and which ones best suit the package my weapon has, and ultimately that's a good thing. The Nocturnal Arms isn't the only place that Supergiant has taken risks like this, but these are the kind of risks that need to be taken to make a sequel feel earned, and I believe the Nocturnal Arms are an area where that risk paid off. Except the daggers. Fuck the daggers. Anyway, combat itself has had a facelift as well, and I think for the better. You can now dash more often, but only have one dash, and to replace your ability to escape danger, you now have a cast, a circle that can be placed at your feet that significantly slows down enemies inside. This was another risk, and part of my arsenal I had to get used to, but now, I fucking love it. The cast itself can be upgraded with boons from the various gods, and it feels phenomenal to use. Omega moves are a nice burst of power balanced by magic consumption, meaning you have to think about how and when to use them. If you get a Selene boon and use enough magic, you can get a Hex, which is basically the spiritual successor to Calls from the original, and these Hexes have their own fucking skill tree as well, and when I opened this up for the first time in a run, I was jaw agape, just shocked at how much meat they put onto the bones of each and every mechanic here, even the ones you wouldn't expect it. And of course, your whole arsenal can be affected by the never-ending amount of boons from an even larger roster of gods than the original, and upgraded by the Daedalus Hammer as well, of course. Let me tell you, the sheer amount of nuance and power that comes from these boons, their curses and abilities is pure insanity. You can cook up some truly diabolical shit in Hades 2, and it feels like they played into the power fantasy of a roguelike much, much more in this one, which I think was a fantastic choice. I'd like to return to the topic I mentioned off the top about video games being a form of art. In reality, video games are an amalgamation of different types of art created by a team of artists, coders, engineers, writers, you name it. I think it's fair to say that without Gen Z's work, specifically on both Hades games, I'm not sure where we'd be. The art of her and the whole art team at Supergiant is striking and detailed, and I don't even want to know how many hours went into making every piece of art in this game, some of which you will never see again, by the way, after certain moments. It's one of the best visual styles I've ever seen, and it's even better in Hades 2. Finally, to end this video, I think it's appropriate to talk about the music. Music has always been important to me, but without Darren Korb, I'm not sure I'd be that attentive to music in other games to begin with. I used to play so many games where I'd immediately turn off the music and put my own on, but not so much anymore. Darren and his music is the cherry on top for many, many, many moments in Hades 2, and it is an important fucking cherry. Also, when I'm reading the comments under many of the OSTs on YouTube, all I'm seeing is people who actually understand music theory going crazy over time signatures and calling Darren a genius, so I'm going to assume his talent is far greater than I can comprehend. All of this to say that yet again Supergiant has killed it and created a piece of art that I'm certain will age exceptionally. I was going to be really cheeky here and make some reference to Da Vinci and how if Hades was the Mona Lisa, then Hades 2 would be his next painting, but then I learned that apparently the Mona Lisa is an unfinished painting, and he also didn't finish his next chronological painting either, so that wouldn't work. But yeah, anyway, have a great day. I'll see you later.